Welcome to PhD with Women on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today we will be having our Christmas special positivity hack delivered, and we are joined by our brilliant male guests, Gunnar Steffansson, Marcus Bravo, and Patrick Young. Today's topic, this is a women's world. Episode 42 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on Women on It, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto, and empathy is critical when you are going to initiate a dialogue about stereotypes, stimulate thought, and inspire to change the ratio. In today's episode, we are going to have an interesting discussion. Recent projections based on economic scenarios modeled by McKinsey and Oxford Economics estimate that employment for women may not recover to pre-pandemic levels until 2024, for two full years after the recovery for men. Without significant action, such as additional employer support and training programs, Fortune magazine reports there is a real danger that female labor force participation could face its steepest sustained decline since World War II. Female workforce participation has already dropped to 57%, the lowest level since 1988. According to the National Women's Law Center. It's time for engaging episode with our gentlemen, and let's not only focus on men, because this is a women's world. Gentlemen, let's start with Patrick, who is next to me. I believe you're still in Valletta. Gunnar, where in the world are you today?
I'm in Iceland, northern Iceland.
Marcos, what about you?
I'm somewhere not too far from Wrocław in Poland.
Fantastic. So, gentlemen, let's start with a very often asked questions. I mean, some of you have got grown-up children, but many women, even if they have grown-up or small children, they are quite often asked, how can you manage looking after your children and having a job? Marcus, you've got the youngest children in this group.
I do, and when I hear a question like that, it really puts me out of my place. I have no idea how we'll answer that because I have some sort of arrangement with my wife. But if I were the one coming back to the workforce, I'll have to say that somehow we will split the work, and eventually I will probably be very confused about why am I replying this? Why is it important for my performance? To be honest, I'm really blank on how I will reply a question like that because I never had it asked before.
There you go, Gunnar. What about you?
Yeah, I've never had the question either. I would be very surprised if I got that question in a job interview or otherwise. If I was asked it, the answer is that we used to simply share parental duties as much as we could and solved any issues. If one of us had an important meeting, the other one would take over with a sick child and so forth. So eventually, you simply solve things. But I agree. This is not a question I would ever expect.
Patrick, I know that you've got a young male cat. It's about 2 years old. How can you cope with looking after a cat and having responsibilities and working with word exchanges?
It's simply impossible. The cat dominates my life and I'm unable to think because I've got permanent cat brain.
That solves it all. Well, gentlemen, I have to say that I am guilty of asking this question as well. And the only reason being that I want to make sure that females know that they can get our support, and we are offering flexible job opportunity. It's not bias. I mean, I sometimes ask this kind of question also males, because I want to make sure that they know that in case there is a father role to be step in, they know that they can do that. They can go to a school, whatever school assessment there is, or whatever is happening in their family life. And in our production today, we've got Jamil, who is a young mother, and quite often she would meet us with her girl, and we would have a joint meeting, and sometimes I would show the cat to the child, because it's important to have a good group meeting. Right, let's go to the next question. As a father, and let's start with Gunnar, as a father, have you never felt guilty about missing out on something?
Oh yeah. You do feel very guilty if you're overseas somewhere and your child has a birthday or whatever it is. And you try to juggle things around to make sure that things work. Cancel a meeting if your spouse is sick or whatever it is. But you definitely have felt guilty about missing out on things.
Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, look, it's always a problem, isn't it? I mean, you're bound to feel guilty when you're traveling or wherever you go, because you're bound to miss something at some stage. So that's always a challenge. I think the difficulty is, in modern life, is it possible to capture absolutely every possible event? Well, even if you're live streaming the whole of your day, you'll still manage to miss something by looking in the opposite direction.
And what about Marcus?
Well, I was working overseas when my daughter was small. She was young. She was about 6-7 months old, and I left home for about 4 months working in the US, and it was hard. I missed tons of things that I really felt guilty. Like, after that, I couldn't do that job again. I mean, it was a really, really nice job, very well paid, but the fact that she was sleeping with the iPad next to her, like and hugging the iPad, just because we were talking there through Skype, it was heartbreaking. So I'm like, since then I said, no, it's family first, and whatever I have to do to cancel things, which is a lot more flexible now than before, I'll do that. I mean, I'm lucky that the most of the organizations I worked so far, if I'm sick or my wife's sick or there's something I need to do, they'll be okay, cool, which is something unthought from before.
Well, isn't technology fantastic? We can join with our children. We can have a gathering wherever in the world you are. And actually, pandemic showed us that even when we are not in front of each other, we can still have this connection, and we can have some quality time, even though we may not be able to hack people. Oh, we've got first question from Olga. I encourage everyone to ask questions. This is your unique opportunity to ask a question. For example, you were asked when you were being interviewed. Hi, Beata, great to see this fun show for Christmas. Thank you, Olga. We are waiting for your question. You always manage to grill our guests. So let's go to the next question that female face quite often during interviews. How do you deal with your beauty? And I'm going to start with Marcus, the most handsome man in this show.
That when I heard that question too, I'm like, will someone really ask, are you hitting on me? What's the deal? Why would someone ask a question like that? It's first of all, I'm totally not on the beauty side, so thank you for the compliment. But it's just so weird that someone will ask something about your appearance, even though we still have resumes or CVs with our photo in there, that it really affects the way we get jobs or not. I don't know. Like I have to deal with my beauty wearing a mask, I guess. I don't know.
There you go. Gunnar.
Yeah, thank you. No, I've never actually been asked this question. But on the other hand, I heard somebody being asked this question. One of our undergraduate students, a second-year undergraduate student, was asked this on a live TV interview, and you sort of sit there. What did that reporter just ask her? And she got away out of this, really, really nicely. But I can't, for the life of me, remember what she said. But yeah, these things do exist. But that was a female reporter, by the way, which I was quite surprised, asking, how come a beautiful blonde girl like you is studying mathematics? And you're like, what did she ask?
That's weird, totally weird. What about you, Patrick?
Well, I think clearly the lady who came before, obviously she was just able to say that blonde and beautiful equaled genius in her elements of algebra. I've not been asked that question previously myself. Not really sure what's the best way to answer. One, muddles along as one can when you're born with these particular looks.
Absolutely. Olga is saying that grilling, how can we expect these men to cook and work? Well, do you cook and work, Marcus? I know that you're a foodie. Well, can you actually cook?
That's my thing. That's like the only thing I can offer my wife is like, honey, you want me to cook lunch or you want me to cook dinner? I'm ready to go. That's like my excuse that I'm not helping around or I'm not doing stuff like I'll cook, please just let me cook.
What about you, Gunnar? Do you like cooking?
I actually rather enjoy cooking. I'm not a very good cook, but yeah, I do like cooking, and it so happens that Christine cooks has traditionally cooked. Christine, my wife, that is, has traditionally cooked considerably more than I have. But doesn't change the fact that I do like cooking, and I'm quite reasonable at it if I actually take the time.
There you go. Are you preparing something for Christmas?
No. These more fancy things are definitely my wife's department.
Oh, there you go. What about you, Patrick?
Well, I mean, on the Christmas question, I don't want to say anything too publicly in case my wife finds out, but I'm going to surprise her with a restaurant on Christmas Day rather than cooking this year, although I do usually cook Christmas dinner. But I think Olga here is hitting on a very, very key point, because she's saying, grilling, how can we expect these men to cook and work? I'm inclined to think that that's a woman trying to open up the age-old question of, can men multitask? And therefore, what she's really trying to say is, can these men actually cope with having a job at the same time as they're actually able to cook? Now, that's a very, very interesting line of questioning, Beata.
Absolutely. Can men multitask? Gunnar, you've had quite a lot of students working for you, and you had quite interesting comparison, and we discussed it, observing the youngsters communicate or talk about their achievements. Can men multitask, or can women multitask better, or is there really a battle of sexes? Is it relevant?
I'm not convinced that it's a gender difference primarily. I think the issue of multitasking, when people have researched it, the little I have seen, seems to indicate that those who believe they can multitask, they're actually worse at multitasking than those who do not. Most of us just do poorly if we try to do many things at once.
There you go. There is a lot of bragging, I believe. What about you, Marcus? I've seen you multitasking. I've seen you in real life in Wrocław when we were doing mentorship for startups. How is it going for you, Marcus? How can you cope with multitasking?
Badly. I'm really trying to stay away from it and try to focus on one thing. I am really bad at staying in one lane, and I try to do a lot of things, but then I get a bit I get a bit tired of it. So then I have to give up one thing to focus on the other one. I try though. I try. I really try to. But I guess multitasking is easier when you do something that you're really passionate about, like doing a podcast or mentoring and things like that. That it helps you sort of put yourself out there. That might work. But if it's about a bunch of things to do, yeah, I'll get a bit crazy there too.
There you go. We've got Christopher Messina. He's saying, I struggle to do one thing at a time. Christopher, thank you so much. I hope you're going to bring some interesting question to our all-male panel, or as they say sometimes, it's a manel today, ladies and gentlemen. We are dealing with great brains from all over the world. Marcus, who's originally from Chile, Gunnar, who's joining us from Iceland, and Patrick, who's originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Trixie Lopez suggests you are about to get into a fight. What song comes on as your soundtrack? There you go. I think it's all about positivity hack delivered. So let's not go into a battlefield. We are talking about the funny bias we are experiencing every day and how to get out of weird questions that are being asked during interviews and give good answers. So,
but just in case, if Trixie want to know, I will go for anything punk rock or very hardcore music. Just to put it out there.
That's the style.
I think the correct answer is anything punk rock or possibly the theme tune to Rocky, because they always come out winning, right, when it happens in the movies. So therefore, you've got an advantage already. When they play punk rock, you rarely get beaten up. You always seem to end up coming up roses. So maybe that's why. Very clever, Marcus.
Absolutely. And we've got Olga, all male multitasking. Yeah, and I saw the Loch Ness Monster in the Bermuda Triangle. There you go. That's a very interesting observation. Well, eye of the tiger, no question, Christopher is suggesting. So, ladies, you need to chip in with some lovely music suggestion to keep the positivity hack delivered. Right, let's go into another question. How do you actually lead with feeling? I mean, this is a weird question, and I was lucky enough never to have it, but apparently there is perception that females cannot leave their feelings behind the door, and they are too emotional. And actually, funny story, side story, I heard in Malta, I was once speaking to a female who is working in a tech company owned by the government, and she told me that her male colleague, a manager, said women cannot be managers because of their period. So, Patrick, how is your period coping? I mean, how do you cope with your period or non-period and manage the work? Oh, you muted.
It's a huge issue. It's obviously very difficult to cope with at all times, but it really is, particularly when you like wearing dark suits like I do, because, you know, you've just got all sorts of problems, bloating, all sorts of other issues. It makes it very uncomfortable for several days.
There you go. Marcus, what about your period?
My period is extremely long and painful. So it's not easy to deal with it either. I only have a few days a month that I can be happy and helpful.
So do you think that, Marcus, let's go back. Do you think period is something that is obstructing us from achieving managerial role?
No, at all. I mean, I never met I met a lot of women that will say, it's just my period. But that doesn't mean at all that women they're out of control during that time or anything. I mean, I know when my wife is on her period, but I know how much control she had over handling things that she's doing, like either work at home or or anything, like dealing with me, trying to be as silly as I usually do. I mean, she'll still smile and she still handle things. I mean, it's a bodily phenomena, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't. I mean, it shouldn't get in the way of how you judge or how you lead or how you task your stuff.
What about you, Gunnar? Your scientific approach tells you that period is something that is obstructing us from getting the higher leadership roles?
Yeah, when I heard this question, I didn't set it in the context of a period. I was just thinking of feelings in general, mood swings or anything like that. And again, I can't believe that anybody would pose this question or talk about this. I haven't heard about any research to this effect. So if you take that approach, there are various levels of various different issues associated with having a period, as is well established medically, and if you like, an employer, this would never be an issue on my side, and as an employee, it wouldn't be an issue either. So I really don't see why anybody would raise this in the first place. Like Marcus says, everybody I know deals with this, handles this, and if they have very difficult periods, then that's something that requires a sick leave, if you like. And,
so Gunnar, again, what would be your answer to this gentleman who who voiced his opinion about females cannot be managers because of their period?
Well, if I was applying for a job, I would go somewhere else. Because I really wouldn't work with a person like this. If it's somebody in my company, I would do my darndest to stand up to this person and say and call his bullshit.
The thing that gets me about all of this is, Gunnar mentions mood swings, and that's a very good point. And so many men throughout the world are fascinated by football. I have no idea why, but they are fascinated by football. And if you want genuinely a mood swing, I mean, women's periods 2 days a month might have an issue. Men's football matches, I mean, football is a game constructed so that the best team in the world still only wins about half the time. So therefore, it's completely ridiculous because you're masochistically wanting to watch something where you're a loser most of the time, even when your team's the best team in the world. I don't understand that. And you look at the mood swings and actually look at the productivity data and the way that companies, particularly factories and a lot of offices, have to reshape their working hours because it's something called the World Cup of Football, which is apparently very important. And every 4 years or whatever they play it, they have to do all sorts of things to re-roster because men's mood swings are so huge throughout it. So, good grief. It strikes me that, we really should be doing something to legislate about football because certainly there's no multitasking going on when that's happening amongst most of the male population.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this very interesting observation. We've got Chris comment. This is not a joke at all, but I wonder if the gender issue truly exists for people under 50. I've spent my whole career on Wall Street and Silicon Valley and in commodities, mining, and have worked with and for women and have supervised some. I have not experienced any particular bias in the teams and on the deals I've been part of it. You're lucky man, Christopher. I have to say that maybe you were born with a golden spoon in your mouth, but definitely I had many examples, and especially giving this opportunity of women on IT community when we can get together and without being judged, we can talk about all the bias that is existing in the community, in the tech space. It really gets some steam out. And today's task, ladies and gentlemen, is to make sure that we can get out of that bias and open our vision, open our eyes into the women's world and try to help the sisterhood. We have a question from In Love and in Pain now. What do you think men can do that women can't? Oh, is there something that women can't do? Patrick, let's start with you.
Well, the only thing that men can do that women can't do on the average is that men, because of the fact they actually have more testosterone, can lift heavier stuff and do more physical labor. And therefore, that's why you do tend to still find that there's a certain bias in, for example, firefighting in favor of men. But it's not unique, because obviously if it comes to holding fire hoses, being intelligent, working out how to rescue people and so on, that can be done by anybody. When it comes to actually trying to carry 100 and something pound or 100 kilo people out of buildings, men do have a fractional advantage. Is that material to all civilization and a good reason why men should be allowed to have a greater opportunity in life than women? No, I'm not suggesting that. But there are obviously differences. And therefore, I think it's very important to go back to, well, what was it Martin Luther King was always talking about? I mean, separate but equal, in understanding the idea that people could be different, but at the same time, they should all have an equal opportunity and live together in harmony and peace.
Fabulous answer. Thank you very much. Do you gentlemen have anything to add? Marcus, Gunnar? Gunnar, please.
Yes. I went on a fire drill once as a part of working on the Marine Research Institute. And so we got these oxygen tanks on our backs and, masks over our faces and completely covered. And then we got blindfolded, so we couldn't see anything. And then we were put into a location. We had to crawl around the tunnel and eventually find a person and drag them out. And this was the most difficult thing I've done in my life, actually. Dragging somebody who's over 100 kilos or trying to hold them, even though there were two of us together. But in that same exercise, there were also two women. They came out, they had run out of oxygen, but each of them had simply grabbed hold of a shoulder of this 110 kilo guy and dragged him out of the vessel, across every single bump in the floor and whatever they came across, and did their thing. And that's the thing. In most cases, you can actually solve everything by using your brain and not just the muscle.
Bravo. Thank you very much. Very good point indeed. Marcus, you're eager to add something.
No, I was just thinking that there are probably more things that women can do than we cannot, I believe that women have more or access empathy easier than we do. When men are in leadership positions, they try to have this sort of lead by example, while women can go down and relate to the team much easier than men. I don't want to generalize, but it's something that I've seen that it's easier for women to understand when someone's going through bad stuff or whatever, more than the guy. Like the guy always have that attitude of tough love and like, oh, well, you have to do better, but I love you, but I hate you, but I love you. You know what I mean?
Well, it comes from the natural role of mothers or motherhood, when females are usually the nurturing mothers. So probably there is some research that is showing how our natural role, or how nature was built us to be kind of more nurturing by nature. Anyway,
can I add to this a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Please, Gunnar.
Exactly this point, because I've been on frequent meetings for junior advisors, where people become PhD advisors and they're beginning, and I'm now one of the old guys. And one of the questions we addressed was, what's the thing that surprised you in this role? And for me, in this role, it's the same as when I was chairman of the mathematics department. It's the number of personal problems that students come to you with that you need to somehow or other help them with. And this can be anything. This can be a person who just got divorced, somebody got beaten by their husband, somebody's in a depression, and really badly, in a really bad state and so forth. And these things you have to deal with. And to tell you the truth, coming out with a PhD in stats and suddenly being faced with these kinds of issues is actually very, very difficult. And I'm with the previous speaker that this is something that, women generally you would expect to be better at than men. And this is a very important part of management. And it's something that's often ignored when you talk to applicants about the position.
Absolutely. So let's go into more broader questions, and let's ask you, why are manholes round? Patrick, I know you've got a specific understanding of English, and I don't really get that. I mean, you can be a husband and a man. I mean, you can be whatever. I mean, there is so much bias in English that I sometimes wonder, like, why are we not changing that? But tell me, why are manholes round? And why are they manholes? You muted.
Manholes are round because it's easier to price them out. And more importantly, it's much easier to put them back because you're not trying to put a square edge anywhere.
Okay. So let's go into a question that we were thinking how to really progress the females' leadership. If I gave you $50,000 to start a business for your daughter, what business would you start? Let's start with Marcos.
Okay, what I will choose as me, I will open a tattoo studio for her. I would love to see her create. She's very good at drawing, but I would love to do something cool that is also lucrative, so she can make money. I would love to open either a tattoo studio or a graphic design company, but tattoo studio is cooler. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. Like I'll open I will manage it, and she will be the artist.
Okay. What about you, Gunnar?
Well, this is an impossible question. Having had about 5 seconds to think about it, I would ask her what she wanted to do and try to support her in it.
Okay. And what do you think? What would be your guess if you see business opportunities that are around and thinking about what would be your daughter's choice, or what would be the best
given that given that I don't actually have a daughter, I've got 3 granddaughters though. One of them is interested in both music and soccer, but even more soccer than anything. Another one is interested primarily in ballet, but so far neither one of them actually has indicated that they might be interested in any particular business, if you like. So I have no idea. The technology would be the sort of place where I would love to see some of my granddaughters, but it's completely their choice, and whatever they would choose, I would certainly try to help them with that.
Patrick, what about you? $50,000 can't get you much far, but what would be your idea for a daughter to start a business for her?
I'm with Gunnar. I don't think that I have got the right to start that business for a daughter or for anybody. I think they've got to decide what they want to have, because otherwise you're going to end up with a business that doesn't really match with what you want to do. I think what you can offer is a lot of mentoring and the ability to try and help them shape and find where they're ideal. Where have they got something they like? What is something that they're good at doing? Perhaps, Gunnar's idea is maybe his 2 granddaughters can get together and they can have a balletic soccer school or a soccer-oriented ballet school, which sounds probably like something would meet the zeitgeist for many. I don't know, but truly, you can't expect, and that's the trick in this question, like the manhole covers one, you're expecting me to jump in as a man and assert myself, and that's exactly the thing we shouldn't do, because we must let women, children, have them opportunity to find their voices, decide what they want to do, and then enable them to do that.
Well, I think it's a very diplomatic answer, Patrick, because we know that our daughter would like to have a piercing studio, and we know that maybe not the best idea, but...
Well, there you go. Hold on a second. Hold on. She's got a natural partner in Marcus's daughter. She's off.
There we go. Business done.
There you go. Yeah, business done. M&A clinic, game over. Yeah, carry on. What's the next question?
Okay, I'll wire that $50,000 and now let's go to Christopher. Has got a best idea ever. Crypto broker. Gunnar, what do you say about that? You're the crypto guru here. Maybe you could advise Christopher's daughter.
You're absolutely right. Of course, I would love it if my grandchildren went into cryptocurrencies. There's just. But there is no way in the world that I would ever try to push them in that direction.
Good. Thank you so much.
Sorry to say, I'm a little disappointed. I thought Chris would have been pushing his daughter into being a rare earths miner.
Oh, there you go. Well, Chris, you have to listen to what Patrick's advice is here. Let's go into the next question. If you could compare yourself with any woman, which would it be and why? Marcus.
Wow. With any woman. Can I go cliche and say with my mom? Just because I mean, it's a lot of the things that I do, a lot of my thought process is very similar to hers, which is very generous and very motherly, but at the same time, she wouldn't trust anyone too much. So I think I'm probably going to stick to I got a lot of that woman in me.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more about your mom, Marcus. What is she doing? Is she still around? And can you tell us a little bit why she's an inspiration to you?
No, she's not. She passed a couple of years ago, like two or 3 years ago. But I always admire the way that she gave up everything to raise us. I don't know how it worked with my mom and dad to decide that that's the way it was going to be, because she had a job before we came to the world, me and my brothers. But she gave up everything just to make sure that that we had a proper home feeling. And I mean, she literally taught us how to read and how to talk and how to write very young. We learned very, very young just because we had her at home. So it was funny though to see her in her late years being very mad that she lost so much time raising us and she didn't get to enjoy too much. But I mean, we try to make her enjoy it as much as we could too.
Patrick, what about your role model? Which female reminds you most of?
I think it's impossible to whittle it down to one. I think that's just a terribly almost sexist construct that there can only be one woman of the many billions who've been through history. And I think I would love to have the drive, the ambition, the ability to execute of Margaret Thatcher. I think to have the raw ability and bravery of Beate Uhse, the famous German sex entrepreneur. I mean, there's a woman who, when she was behind the German lines, she was actually a pilot, a test pilot and a freight pilot for the German Air Force during the Second World War. As a Luftwaffe pilot, she was faced as a young single mother with being somewhere behind the Russian lines, with the Russians advancing and encircling her all the way around. She stole a Messerschmitt 109 fighter, which she didn't quite know how to fly, flew it behind the Allied lines with her baby basically on her lap. And no, they did not have child seat belts in Luftwaffe Messerschmitts. Landed it, was taken prisoner, managed to survive in the free West, and therefore was not a child of communism and suffered for the rest of her life and became a multimillionaire. With women like that who've got such incredible drive, with the beautiful, bounteous creativity of someone like Coco Chanel, you want me to choose one role model? It's impossible.
What about Gunnar? Do you have many role models or just one?
I think so. I think I'd have to say many, like Patrick. I mean, the things that goes through your brain are range from Marie Curie to Malala and Angela Merkel. How she got from where she started to where she ended and so forth. The list is just so long that I wouldn't know where to start. And when you meet somebody in the late 20s and you sort of ask, so what do you do? And she tells you, well, I fly these large passenger airplanes out of Singapore. How did you get into flying? Well, I started with the Swedish Air Force. And you sort of look at this person who, when you're in your 60s, looks like just out of school, and you're just totally amazed. And this happens to me all the time. I'm totally amazed at young women and older women at what they've achieved and how they've gotten through often very adversarial environments to get to where they are.
Right, we've got Christopher Messina. I think he's jealous of not being in the show. Let's see. He says, Queen Elizabeth II, she's the bomb. Plus, I always have a bag full of stuff with me and love corgis. There you go. Chris, thank you very much for sharing with us. Now, Patrick, let's start with you. Teach women on it something we don't know in the next 60 seconds about something.
The most important thing we have to fear is fear itself. And at all points in time, the important is that if you don't speak up now, then you probably will never speak up. Seize the opportunity, carpe diem, as the ancient Romans used to say. It's vitally important to bring your voice to the table at all times and say something.
Good. What about you, Marcus? Teach us something we don't know in the next 60 seconds.
I don't know if you don't or not, but we as men, we can't do much without women in general. This is something I keep telling my daughter too. It's like, you guys are the support that we need to accomplish things as men, while you can do it on your own. You don't need a guy to help you. Most guys, we need a woman to support us.
Bravo. Thank you, Marcos. Bravo. What about you, Gunnar? 60 seconds.
My advice is don't underestimate yourself. That's the biggest thing that I see so very often with a lot of young people and our female students in particular. And when we've done actual measurements on this, that does seem to be the case. So we need more women in technology, for example, and we see girls moving away from it into other fields, even if they have higher grades than their male colleagues, male peers, and I think that's a difficulty that we need to address, and that women need to basically stand up, believe in what they're doing, and like Patrick says, not just speak up, but also to act and do what they're interested in, and not be afraid that they, maybe not. That this may not be the easiest topic for them, but they can definitely do it just like their male colleagues.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, we all are born with tabula rasa. We all can learn things. We all have equal opportunities. Sometimes it's very tricky though. And a question for you, gentlemen, if you were asked a very tricky question, and it's in general, how would you give an answer without kind of losing chances in this interview process. What would be your advice how to answer a tricky question, inappropriate question during a job interview? Marcus?
I will try to answer with the same tone, the same. If it's a tricky question, give it a tricky answer. Just make sure that you're not taking it super personal. You're just trying to act as professional as you can, even though it might be one of those like about your period or about having kids. Just be prepared for that kind of questions and try to answer the best or the most professional way you can.
Great. What about you, Gunnar?
Yeah, when we prepare our students for PhD defenses, we tell them to not be afraid of saying I don't know. So answer what you can, answer it honestly, and if you think something holds, say so, but also tell them that you think so. But if you don't know, just say that as well. If it's a nasty question, then I wouldn't know how to respond to that. I've never had one of them, and I really, I wouldn't want to work in a place where a woman get asked, whether you got there because of your beauty or whether you could lead because of all the feminine feelings that you have and so forth. I really wouldn't want to work in a place like that.
Thank you very much, Gunnar. Patrick, what about you?
What was the question again?
How to deal with questions that are nasty, inappropriate, how to deal with this kind of question without losing chances of being hired?
I think it's very important that at all points in time, we should endeavor to be polite, reasonable, and give an audience to no matter how moronic the question might be and how much it shows up of the other person. And I certainly think the more you can manage to rise above these sorts of things, the better. Whether you ultimately want to take that job is an entirely separate question, exactly as Gunnar has referred to. But at the same time, keep it classy. I think one of the worst things that goes on in modern life is a race to the bottom. And also, as Gunnar said, people feeling they have to know everything. Because actually, if we look at what's gone on during the course of COVID, the media have demanded answers, lots of people have demanded answers, and then we have a whole group of people who are supposedly experts who've actually provided answers, and 99.9% of the time, they've actually ended up being wrong, which therefore leads only to the profound further insult ignorance. And I think it's very, very important to admit when you do not know something, but to push back. Because you do not know everything does not mean that you are stupid. Far from it. It means that you're more in touch with yourself as a human being than, frankly, the kind of alpha male who tries to bluster his way out of every possible situation and thinks he hasn't answered every question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think that really inspired Marianne Madeira, who's with us as well, to say a little word to everyone. Hello, everyone. What would you do if your wife asked you to quit your job so you can be a house husband? That's a very interesting question. Let's start with you, Marcos.
It will. I don't want to say it will depend. There will definitely be a conversation of why one of us, or why will be the reason that one of us will stay at home. But definitely, yeah. I mean, why not? Like, I would love to be a stay-home dad. I hated work more before when you have to commute everywhere. Now I don't hate it that much because I just work from here. But I wouldn't mind at all if she says like, look, I have a great opportunity, a lot of growth coming. We can achieve our dreams or whatever. Let's do it. If she has better opportunities than I do, why not?
Gunnar, you have a career woman in your house. I mean, she's a power in itself. She's running an exchange, and Christine is very powerful, has a very interesting career. What would you do if she asked you to stay at home?
Yeah, I was trying to see, when this could actually come up, because normally we would just try to settle things and split the tasks. I suppose if we were talking about a great job opportunity in another country with and at the time when we had small children, this sort of could have come up. Let's just do it.
Okay, so you're open to stay at home and be a stay-at-home dad, right?
Yeah. The thing is, though, that I'm a lousy stay-at-home dad. I tried this when my children were my boys were young, and I tended to work also. So sort of house cleaning and things like that got left for quite a while, and we'd be fine together. Me and my junior, whenever he was awake, and then whenever he went to sleep, I'd do some work. And I think that's a habit I would have a really hard time dropping completely. I would always have something to look at, something to work on, and so forth. But no, I'd be open to the idea, usually.
Okay. What about you, Patrick? I know from our experience, you sometimes stayed at home and looked after Laura, who was ill. But in the long run, would you be able to say farewell to your career?
I think it's a great question. Thank you very much, Marianne. I think the question is not so much would it be me saying farewell to my career as how would the relationship go given my low standards of housekeeping? And I think there's a big argument there to be made for the fact that actually, if I was in a direct competitive runoff against anybody, for example, someone with perhaps half the number of limbs I have who can't actually see, they probably would do housework better at a better standard than I would because I'm practically inept. So I think that could be an issue. I might be able to cook very nicely, but apart from doing the dishes, it might not work out very well. So I think the thing that I would do if my wife asked me to quit my job so I could be a house husband is ask whether we think that I'm actually going to be able to measure up to the standards she would like to see delivered in her home.
Okay, let's leave this question looming and let's not answer it here on this show. I wanted to ask you, this is 7 minutes left to the end of the show. What advice would you give to other females to help their career or start an entrepreneurial journey? Let's start with you, Gunnar.
Well, that's the same as before, isn't it? Don't underestimate yourself. I think that's the biggest single issue involved. That people who want to go out and do something, and this is for men or women, they hesitate. They worry too much, think too long. And having said that, of course, you do need to do your budgeting and get all your check all your balances and so forth. But I think there are a lot of cases when people don't believe they can do this, and whereas they could. And I see a lot of those, and I think everybody does.
Thank you so much, Marcos. What about you? Advice to females wanting to progress their career or entrepreneurial journey?
I'm gonna follow what Gunnar says. It just do it. I had a lot of jobs for the last 10 years. Every single one, I had no clue how to do it when I started. I'm not gonna say I lied because I didn't. I just worded very well what I could do, what I could not do, and eventually they give me a chance and figure out things on the way. I mean, it's just take the chance, go for it. Don't pretend that you know everything. Just go for it and learn on the way. I mean, companies are a lot more forgiving now than they were before. So take it.
Yes, absolutely. Mantra from startup world, fake it till you make it, is applicable. What about you, Patrick? Advice to females if they want to start their entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I think I would go with someone who was Queen of Scotland at one point in time, and of course, most famously portrayed in a Shakespeare play. So that would be Lady Macbeth. And nowadays, I'm sure she would actually be a great mentor and coach to people. Her infamous, of course, remark was, "Screw your courage to the sticking place and you shall not fail." What a perfect advice from a woman who was herself very driven. By the way, that's not advice to go out and try and kill the opposing King of Scotland, which is something that she ended up doing, probably because there wasn't a sufficient startup incubator environment in the north of Scotland at that point in time. But nonetheless, great advice. Just do it, as the other speakers have been saying.
Thank you so much for that advice. Now let's go into the top 5 skills all career-driven females, in your opinion, should have. Marcus.
Oh, wow. From the top of my head, just courage to go for it. Empathy, absolutely, and that's something comes easier for women, in my opinion. Drive, ambition. That's all I can think right now. Like that really caught me off guard. But yeah, it's just the ambition of you can do whatever, and the courage to jump for it, and the empathy to understand the people around you. Those are probably the top 3 things I can think of.
Well, you came up with 4 actually: courage, empathy, drive, and ambition. These are good. If you, in the meantime, come up with the 5th one, you're more than welcome to step in. Let's go into Patrick. 5 qualities.
Courage, communication, empathy, as Marcus already said, ambition, and indeed, I would say a very, very strong thing to do at all points in time is read. This is the information society. Back when aged people like me were growing up, we had to go to these places called libraries, which were big, big, big places, which were full of all sorts of weird and wonderful little rats and other things that were growing around and about in between books, which you had to take off shelves and look. Nowadays, you've got Uncle Google and Auntie Wikipedia, the world's ultimate information power couple, and they're at the end of your fingertips. Read, 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 read. When you find out a new word, when you hear something in a meeting you don't know, go read it, go Google it, find out about it. Be curious at all points in time. Whatever's going on in a meeting, whatever happens, whatever's going on, ask, ask, ask. If you have to, become a pain in the backside because you ask so many questions, because the more questions you ask, the more answers you get. The more answers you get, the more conversations you have. The more conversations you have, the more opportunities will come your way.
Fantastic. Gunnar, is there anything you can add to this mix?
Well, I think it's even more important not just to think of what qualities you need to have, but to recognize that people with all different qualities are needed in every large organization. So, we need different people in the groups we have. We have high-tech groups where we need people with very good people skills. We have high-tech groups where we need somebody with outstanding C++ programming skills and so forth. So, maybe you don't just need, skills A, B, C, D. Maybe you should also get marks for having certain skills yourself, which can be utilized in this particular group or company that you're working for. But it is also extremely important that you try to adapt to the situation you're in and recognize the famous imposter syndrome for what it is. It's just a syndrome. Everybody feels at some stage that they don't know what everybody else is talking about, and this goes for everybody. So you're not alone. Recognize it and go out and just figure out what the hell they're talking about.
Thank you. That's a very, very valid point. There are many qualities to bring to the table. So all you need is screw your courage to the sticking point and you shall not fail. Marcus, did you think of the 5th quality for a female to start entrepreneurial journey?
I'm going to steal what Patrick said and go for communication. I think I have to agree with that one. Having a good communication good communication skills is something that opened tons of doors for me, just because I could talk in a way that I can relate, and we can have a very good understanding of where we are in our positions and the way I feel. And that's something that you definitely men and women can do, having it for sure.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this lovely, interesting discussion, a lively discussion. I would like to recognize the fact that we are by nature biased. I mean, I at one point even talked about my friends' children, and I said, I was talking about the great show of Cars, and maybe her son could come and watch it. And Patrick, my husband, interrupted and said, well, what about her daughter? She could see it as well. So even though I'm trying to recognize the fact that we are surrounded by bias, and even though there is so much to open our eyes to and not be just focused on computer skills or football or whatever tickles your G-spot, there are things that can inspire you, so you should read, you should spend time reading, and courage is definitely helpful when you want to progress your career. Not being afraid of asking why this particular question is asked during the job interview. Is there anything else, Patrick, that you can think of female leaders should do when being asked tricky question or when experiencing bias? Muted? Yep.
The most important thing to do when you're being asked a difficult question is take a couple of seconds to pause. Pause, think, and structure your answer. The worst thing you can do is explode in a temper or give the first thing that comes to mind. Take your time, breathe, and then answer that question with a structure and indeed a passion that demonstrates that you have thought about it and you have a strong opinion on what you need to have a strong opinion about.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Patrick, for helping me with this show. And thank you very much, Gunnar, for delivering very interesting observations of your students. And Marcus, as always, you talked your way out of very tricky questions, including the one of $50,000 and what would you start as a business for your daughter. And as we said, as Gunnar actually pointed out, if there is a toxic atmosphere, you don't want to be working there. It's much better to walk out of that door than get this job and struggle for the next couple of years and lose your career for somebody who doesn't see the potential. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, as Maya Angelou says. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for interesting questions, great comments, and this is time to wrap our show. We wish you a Merry Christmas. Our next show will be after New Year's Eve. We will be talking about Flutter. Thank you very much, Olga Vasina, Christopher Messina, In Love and in Pain, and Marianne Madera for delivering questions, comments. It's been a pleasure. Once again, gentlemen, wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I like to live dangerously, as Patrick would say, because in the word of happy holidays, we have to say what is deep in our heart. And I'm being a Catholic girl raised in a Polish country, I definitely recognize the Holy Spirits and that live upon us and the great time that is coming. Today is your day to hack your future. Hack the positivity you want. Thank you so much for our lovely audience, our great guest, and thank you for delivering another positivity hack.
Thank you, everyone.